Yes, let's talk about hockey, the show that journeys through the history of the sport of ice hockey from its disputed origins to the game we see today. When we last left off, it had been 6 years since the destruction of the Westmount Arena ended the Montreal Wanderers Club, and the NHL was looking to add another team to the Montreal scene to appeal to the area's English community the way that the Canadiens appealed to the area's French-Canadian community. With the new Montreal Forum completed in the fall of 1924, the NHL welcomed the club that they hoped would form a lucrative local rivalry with the Canadiens, the Montreal Maroons. Though officially the new team was known as the Montreal Professional Hockey Club and had no nickname, the media eventually tagged the Maroons moniker to them in reference to the color of their jerseys, even if the club itself would never officially change to incorporate Maroons into their name. In their first year, the Maroons wouldn't exactly put out a stellar performance, finishing second from last in the league with a 9-19-2 record. But the additions of Nelson Stewart, Babe Sabere, and Bill Phillips for the following year helped bring about a quick turnaround. The Maroons jumped to a second-place finish in the standings to make their postseason debut in the 1926 playoffs. There, they would knock off the Pittsburgh Pirates 6-4 over 2 games, then upset the highly favored Ottawa Senators 2-1 over another 2-game series to win the NHL crown and the right to play the Western Hockey League and defending Stanley Cup champion Victoria Cougars for the ultimate prize. Against Victoria, Maroons goaltender Clint Benedict would pitch 3 shutouts, allowing only 3 goals in Montreal's only loss to the Cougars, while rookie winger Nelson Stewart scored 6 of Montreal's 10 total goals, leading the Maroons to the 1926 Stanley Cup title after 4 games against Victoria. The following year, the NHL expanded to 10 teams and split into 2 divisions, the Canadian and American. Under the new format, the Maroons finished 3rd in the Canadian division and were matched up with their fellow Montreal club in their opening playoff series. Though the Montreal Forum's capacity was listed as only 10,000, 11,000 fans somehow crammed into the arena for the first game of this Montreal-on-Montreal matchup, which played to a 1-1 tie. Game 2 would be just as crowded. This time, though, the Canadiens came out on top, tallying the only goal of the game in overtime to win the total goal series 2-1. The Maroons, though, would get their revenge in the playoffs the next year, as they met the Canadiens again, this time in the semifinals, where they edged out their counterparts 3-2 to earn the right to play in the Stanley Cup Series once again. Here, they came across the 2-year-old New York Rangers club. However, after 5 hard-fought games that were all played at the Montreal Forum, since the circus occupied Madison Square Garden, the Rangers were the ones toasting to their success with the Stanley Cup, while the Maroons were left with a summer to regroup and reevaluate. But what they came back with was far less than anyone expected, as their pitiful record left them at the bottom of their division and out of the playoffs. However, they would rebound the next year to claim the 1930 Canadian Division title, thanks in large part to one of the most productive and penalized group of forwards. Consisting of Hooley Smith, Babe Sabere, and Nels Stewart, and named after the first letters of their last names, the S-line led the team in goals and points in the 1929-1930 season, with Stewart also earning the Hart Trophy as the league MVP. Despite the power this line wielded in the regular season, though, it would not be enough in the playoffs, as they were dispatched by the Boston Bruins in the semifinals. In 1930-31, it would be the same story, as Nelson Stewart led his team in goals and points, and the Maroons were again downed in their first playoff match, this time by the New York Rangers by a total goal score of 8-1. For the next 4 seasons, the Maroons would alternate between 3rd and 2nd place finishes in the regular season, but it would not be until the 4th year of this streak that they would garner some significant playoff success. Under the direction of new coach Tommy Gorman, who led Chicago to the Cup the previous year, the Maroons shut down the Blackhawks with their defense, topped the Rangers with their offense, and then swept past the Maple Leafs for their club's second Stanley Cup in 1935. This also gave Gorman the distinction of being the only coach to ever win back-to-back cups with two different teams. In spite of this victory, though, the Great Depression was taking its toll on the Maroons' attendance numbers. By 1935, after 3 seasons in a row of finishing with the worst attendance in the league, the Maroons joined the Canadiens under the ownership of the Canadian Arena Company, and their continued financial troubles forced them to sell off several key players. Despite these losses, the Maroons played on and finished the 1935-36 season at the top of the Canadian Division. This finish matched them up with the Detroit Red Wings to open up the 1936 playoffs, a series that will forever be etched in the history books, or at least the first game of it, as the Maroons and Red Wings battled through 176.5 minutes of scoreless hockey before Detroit's Mud Brunetto netted the only goal of the game in the 6th overtime period. The Maroons' inability to score on Detroit's Norm Smith would continue well into Game 3 of the series, until they finally managed to score a single goal. But by then, it was too little too late, and the Maroons were brushed aside in a 3-game sweep. In December the following season, the Maroons would trade Captain Hooley Smith to the Boston Bruins, a move that would mark the beginning of the end for the franchise. By the start of the 1937-38 season, rumors were rampant that the Maroon franchise would be moved to another city. However, the president of the Maroons stated that the team would be staying in Montreal. But with the loss of 2-time All-Star defenseman Lionel Conacher to retirement, and the team's bleak financial situation finally catching up with them, the team's poor performance sank them further and further into the red. The final game of the season, and last game for the Maroons franchise, came on March 17, 1938 against the Canadiens. The Maroons would lose the game 6-3 and finish the season with a record of 12 wins, 30 losses, and 6 ties, placing them dead last in the Canadian division and overall in the league. The Maroons were allowed to suspend operations for the following season, and over the next several years, the club's owners would try to sell the franchise to interested groups in St. Louis and Philadelphia. However, with economic conditions of the time and a lack of an adequate arena in Philadelphia, both deals fell short. It would not be until 1947 that the end would officially come for the Maroons, as the second counterpart to the Canadiens was relegated to the history books.